All right. Hi, it's Jim Connell from Craftsman Cafe. I am here with my friend David Robertson, who is going to be a junior next year at TCU. And David is a super talented young man. And the purpose of this video really is just to talk a little bit about what his plans are and talk shop a little bit about careers and things like that. David's an LHS graduate, which is near and dear to me. So let's just jump right into it, David. Why did you choose TCU?
Absolutely. And thank you for doing this, Jim.
Sure.
I chose TCU for a couple of reasons. I remember back in high school, I really did not have a clear vision of where I wanted to go to school. I had a couple friends apply to TCU, and prior to myself applying, I thought the school was actually a lot bigger than it actually was. It has around 10,000 undergraduate students, but I thought that was super cool because the school spirit in which it contains at TCU is just absolutely huge. And I think it's really cool when you have a mid-sized school like that with a huge school spirit, especially with an emphasis on community. I can't tell you how many times I've worn a TCU shirt or a TCU hat, whether that's out of state or just back home in Chicago. And, every time someone will come up to me and be like, "Hey man, like go Frogs," something like that. So yeah.
That's cool, man. I have a friend who actually graduated from TCU many years ago, Michelle, and she loved it. She loved it. So tell me, what is your focus of study? And not only that, but what sparked your interest in your focus of study?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm currently a marketing major. I'm minoring in finance, and then I've been able to be a part of a very cool program here at TCU, the TCU Consultative Sales Program. So with that, I'll be able to essentially double minor, and that second minor will be a certificate in consultative selling. So to answer your second part of that question is what kind of piqued that interest. My parents have always told me for a while that, they've seen me in sales, but I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that the main reason was I actually had a conversation with my aunt, and I think it was about 2 years ago. Her name's Suzanne Coonan. She's an executive coach at Amazon. Basically what she does for a living is she gets an amazing opportunity to talk with all these brilliant leaders, talk about their goals, talk about their passions, and kind of give them clarity of, what they're looking forward to and how they can be essentially the most successful they can be. So I had a serious conversation with her about 2 years ago, and she kind of looked me in the eyes one day and was like, "David, if you do not do something with consultative selling, I don't know what else you're going to be much better at." So she was being real with me, and that's kind of how I knew like this is something I was pretty passionate about and wanted to go into.
Man, that's a great story for a few reasons. Number one, I know your aunt, and she is a exceptionally talented woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I've actually gone to her for counsel too. I didn't know that story before you just told me, but wow, that's great. And you hung on to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You hung on to what your mom and dad were sharing with you. And then you went and found other people within your family in this particular case. And by the way, has anybody else been influential as you, whether it's a counselor or a teacher or LHS? Has anybody else come to mind that you found to be really helpful as you start to map out your educational career and then ultimately your job career?
Oh man. I'm sure you know this, but I've been so lucky to grow up in Libertyville. Libertyville High School itself has so many teachers that, I connected with very strongly too. I would say my senior year of high school, I had two teachers that really helped me kind of narrow in my focus of what I wanted to do and gave me essentially like a confidence boost, just from what they've talked to me about. So one of them was my psychology teacher, Miss Bosman. The other one was my speech professor, Mr. Thomas. So both of those two, they showed a lot of, they just poured out pretty much everything into me. They would just talk to me after class. We would have real in-depth conversations. And I still talk with them to this day occasionally. So
Really?
it's been awesome. Yeah.
God, that's great. That's great to hear, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Of
So
course.
going back now, so going from, that's a cool experience at LHS, and I'm happy to hear that. Now at TCU, you've been there 2 years now.
Mhm.
So I don't know how to ask this other than share with me an example of one or two things where might have been like aha moments, things that you've learned about business that perhaps you were surprised by or you just really enjoyed and thought, man, that's cool. I didn't understand that maybe, or I wasn't aware of that. Um, and it had an impact on you.
Yeah, definitely. So this semester I'm actually in a Foundations of Selling class, and I'm actually the only sophomore in the class. So the rest of the class is just juniors and seniors. And I have one of my older friends who's a senior here. I've been able to kind of use him as a mentor. And I remember, one time in class, our professor just really emphasized the importance of networking, and just being consistent, and how important it is to be an effective communicator and all this stuff. Like I knew that it was important, but until I actually saw it, saw people with more experience than me who's actually used it in the real world, in the real business world, it really stuck out to me, and how important it was, essentially.
Tell me a little bit about what are your networking plans? We talked a little bit offline about this, but tell me what your networking plans are for the summer.
Yeah. As of right now, I have a goal. That goal is I have a list of about 10 to 15 people on my phone. They all work in different industries in the business world, in the business field, different fields. So my goal is just to reach out to all of them, be able to talk to them in person if I can. I know it's difficult with COVID, but if I could get a tour of what they work, what exactly they do, and just essentially get as many doors open as possible. That's my goal
That's
for the summer.
that's awesome. I think there's a lot of that's a rich experience, and like you said, with COVID, it's a little bit impossible or tough these days. But spending time with someone, like in their space, whether it's in their office or in their plant or what have you, I've always found that to be a really rewarding and worthwhile effort to try and make that happen. So I commend you on that. Tell me a little bit of, do you have any dream companies? I always like to ask younger people, like, if there was anywhere you could work, share a couple with me and then why.
For sure. I would say in terms of, I would love to get into either medical technology sales or commercial real estate. In terms of like medical companies, I would love to be able to work for Stryker, Medline, Uline, any of those three. I look at those three and I see three companies who have consistent growth every year, specifically Stryker. Kevin Lobo is the CEO. He's had a broad career across many industries, but he mentioned that for the past 39 years, their sales has grown every single year. And, in my opinion, that just doesn't happen by accident. So I think that's awesome. In terms of big technology companies, I feel like companies such as IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, just really successful companies with great employee culture. That's something that one of my older friends here has told me to really look for, and looking for a job or a company that you would like to work for. And then just in terms of commercial real estate, I think CBRE, one of the largest commercial real estate companies in the world, I think what they do is just phenomenal.
Wow. That's great. That's great. Do you have anybody at CBRE on your list of calls in terms of networking?
I do actually. Jeff
Good.
Wilson, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but.
No, I don't know Jeff, but that's awesome. Kudos to you,
Okay.
man. I might have another one for you on that.
That would be wonderful.
I got two guys actually. They're brothers and super super nice guys, and I'm sure one of them or both of them would be willing to chat. So we can talk about that offline. But
Awesome.
I like your focus and you give me the impression that you've done some homework on these companies too, which is very impressive, David. So moving on to the next question. So you're going to be a junior. You know, this thing, shoot, I remember, I mean, it goes fast, right?
Very fast.
What kind of advice would you give incoming freshmen? So I'm a senior, I'm getting ready to go away to college or go to community college. It doesn't matter, but what kind of advice, if someone asked you like, hey, you know, it sounds like you're talking to elder classmen. So now you be the elder classman. What kind of advice would you have?
Absolutely. I would say, and there's a lot of good advice. I would probably say really make an attempt to not make decisions based on status. College is an amazing opportunity to figure out your passions and build relationships with people that will motivate you to be better. The same friend I was talking about earlier once told me that you're the mean of who you surround yourself with. And if you really focus on finding people who you want to be more like and who you find are very successful, whatever you want to do, naturally you will become better in whatever your goals are. So that's what I would have to say.
Wow, that's great advice.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about what you said though with status. Dig into that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Totally. So just coming into college, especially as a freshman, everything's new, especially for me. I went to a completely different state, somewhere 16 hours away from home. And there was definitely some pressure to kind of build the certain status that you had for yourself. And I think that can be really dangerous because it kind of gets in the way of all the opportunities that college presents you. And, you know, there were certainly times where I feel like that happened to me, but looking back on it, I'm just kind of grateful that I was eventually able to realize that and, you know, build relationships with people, not just based on status, but based on, you know, who they are, who their character is, who they want to be.
That's great. Now, a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up. You're a musician. And I don't want you to feel the need to like, well, I'll just ask you the question.
Okay.
What has, you know, you know how much I love the arts, right? And especially music. And I'm not a musician. But what have you learned, you know, whether you can draw a parallel to business and or your college experience and how you've, you know, it's been challenging to stay focused, right? With all this, you know, online COVID stuff. What has learning an instrument, playing music taught you in general?
Yeah. If you talk to anyone who has ever tried playing an instrument, they will tell you that it is anything but easy. I remember, I think I began playing guitar when I was 9 or 10. And there were literally times where I sat with my guitar teacher and kind of like broke down into tears because I was so frustrated that, you know, I seemed like I hit this plateau and was not getting any better. But I mean, like so many things in life, if you just keep working at it, keep going back, not really concentrating on what you're not yet, if that makes sense, but just concentrating on little things that you can improve on, taking it literally one step at a time. And then without even kind of realizing it, you're kind of at a level that you never even thought was possible before. I look at that with my experience with sports. I look at it with my academic experience, so many aspects in life.
Yeah, it reminds me of that saying. What's that saying? How do you eat an elephant? You know, one bite at a time.
Absolutely. Wow.
So it's out, and now you were a very you're really into baseball.
Mm-hmm.
You played at the high school level every year.
Every year. Mm-hmm.
And would it be safe to say that that's, well, you kind of said it already, but you've kind of learned the same thing through music and through athletics, that, you know, one step at a time and just keep building the skill set.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you miss the baseball stuff? Are you playing now or at all?
I'm not. Me and a couple of my buddies will go outside and toss the baseball a couple times, but to answer your question, I definitely miss it. I think about it pretty much every week, but I know that this is what I wanted to do in college and I'm very happy.
Yeah, that's great. So last question, and this is probably, you see this one coming, but I think it's an important question. and that is, given the last year and the challenges that this year has brought every single person on earth, how have you managed to focus as a student and just as a young person that's, growing in your life academically and otherwise, and you've got all these other responsibilities as it relates to, really trying to land an internship and things like that. What's kept you going, and what's kept you focused?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people, especially my age, have gotten like super overwhelmed with what's going on. And at least for me, if I wasn't able to keep up with like my organization, I'd probably be a mess. And then just on top of that, just finding other hobbies or other things to work at. So like for me, that was music. I was able to notice when I would be getting overwhelmed or stressed out and pick up the guitar and learn something new. And just when you kind of occupy your mind with other things and realize that there are just so many other things going on in this world, that really helped me a lot.
Yeah, so keeping yourself busy, perspective sounds like it's
Yes,
important.
absolutely.
That's great. Okay, so final question, and then we'll wrap up. What are you listening to lately?
Oh, man, I think a better question would be what I'm not listening to right now. But
Okay.
been getting a lot of John Mayer. I love the Foo Fighters. I've been listening to their stuff a lot recently. So I don't know,
Okay.
just a lot of everything, to be honest.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, John Mayer is a good, that's a stretch goal, right?
Yeah, he's not too bad at the guitar. So
The guy's an absolute beast. I know some people, and I was one of them. I was actually early on, I was like, I wasn't feeling it.
yeah,
And my daughter, Kathleen, who she wanted to go see him. And this is a few years ago. So I took her and a couple friends to see John Mayer, and Pino Palladino was on bass and Steve Jordan was on guitar, drums. And I'll tell you, man, I was just mesmerized. It was a hell of a show. And that guy can, obviously he can play. So I gave him a little bit more time and really have come to really enjoy his work. But that's my John Mayer story.
that's awesome to hear. That's actually funny that you say that, because I remember having similar arguments with my parents. My parents have unbelievable taste in music, and sadly, I think I was a little too stubborn to recognize that as a younger child. And they would just tell me like, "Oh my gosh, this guy's one of the best guitar players in the world." And me, who's probably played guitar for like 2 years, was like, "No, he's like nothing compared to some of these other guys." And then as I got older, I really started listening to his stuff, and it's absolutely incredible what he's been able to write. So
Yeah, he's good, man. Well, David, it's always a thrill for me to hang out with students. I commend you on the work you've done. I've observed from afar how you roll, and after talking to you about a week ago, I was just really impressed with how you're doing in school and how you're taking it very seriously in the outreach. It's very hard, and it takes a lot of courage to reach out. And I commend you for that list that you have, and encourage you to keep reaching out to people that have had careers. I know you've got a great list going, and let's stay in touch. And and just check in once in a while. And it's great to see you. And I'll end this here, and then once I hit stop, it's going to start to download. I'll make sure this recording keep flashing at me, so I'm hoping and praying that this thing actually recorded correctly, because it's acting a little weird. But I'll shoot you a text and let you know. And hoping we don't have to do it again, but this thing is getting a little shaky on me, so I'll end it now, and we'll catch up.
perfect. Hey, thank you for everything. Really appreciate that.
No problem, man. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good night.
All right. You too. Thanks, Jim.
Bye-bye.